Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237, coming at you with another Patreon request. And this is a request put in by my first and only patron, jamaral81, good friend of mine. If you'd like to change that, go over to Room 237 Reviews Patreon page, check out the tiers. I think you can get some cool stuff on there. Good way to get reviews that you want me to do on there. So definitely go check that out. And he wanted me to do the 1981 slasher film Hell Night, which I do not own, surprisingly, and even more surprisingly, I have never seen Hell Night. I've heard of it, I've known of it for years. It's got Linda Blair, I've known it has Linda Blair. There's a couple times I was supposed to go get it, and then when I went to go pick it up, it wasn't there anymore. It was shortly after Arrow put out their Blu-ray of it. So I'm glad he requested it because I've wanted to see it for a while, but it's free on YouTube. But the title and the description on YouTube says 1976, which is weird. Like that's not even an original release or production or anything. It's 1981. Made for 1.4 million, made 2.3. And I mean, this is 1981. This is the boom of slasher films. And probably one of my favorite years for horror in general. I mean, so many good movies came out in 1981. I mean, just on top of my head, you had, of course, Evil Dead, American Werewolf in London, My Bloody Valentine, Nightmares and Damaged Brain, The Howling. Of course, sequels like Halloween 2, Friday the 13th Part 2, Just Before Dawn, fuckload of them. Burning, I believe, was 81. Yeah, The Burning. And Hell Night. It was directed by a guy named Tom DeSimone, which is funny because Joe Pesci's character, Tommy, in Goodfellas, is Tommy DeVito. But in real life, the real Tommy that he's playing was Tommy DeSimone, and it's spelled the same, so that's funny. Written by Randy Feldman and stars Linda Blair, Vincent Van Patten, Peter Barton, and Suki Goodwin. That's our main cast. And Peter Barton is actually the guy from Friday the 13th Final Chapter that gets his head crushed in the shower. So, of course, this was before that. And it's cool that Linda Blair is in this because it's young Linda Blair, 4 years after Exorcist 2. The only good thing about Exorcist 2, sorry I'm wiping my nose so much, just my fucking sinuses. So it's not like when she's older and it's like a cameo, like, hey, check it out, we got Linda Blair. It's like, no, she was a young actress. I thought she did perfectly fine in this. Put out by Compass International Pictures, which this was the last film that they would put out. And Linda Blair was nominated for a Razzie for Worst Actress. Just thinking of all the films that came out in 81, I don't see why at all. I don't know what that... Like, I can't really think of any on top of my head right now, but I know there's a shit ton worse actresses from films. I mean, films in general, not just horror. But, I mean, that's kind of crazy. And the plot is about as simple as you can get for a slasher film, but they do some things that are pretty interesting. Which also, the executive producer of this was Chuck Russell, guy that directed 1988's The Blob. He directed The Mask. Uh, he also directed Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors, who he collaborated with Frank Darabont on Dream Warriors. He served as the production assistant on this. And of course, Darabont would go on to do Shawshank Redemption, Green Mile, The Mist. I believe he's doing The Long Walk, which is a King story I've been wanting to be made for a long time. But anyway, so there, it opens up at this college costume party, and it's the night of this hazing ritual for the fraternity Alpha Sigma Rho, where they take their pledges and they put them in this gothic mansion that's supposed not haunted. It's not like but there's like an urban myth. Because it's called the Garth Manor. Because the story is there was a guy named Raymond Garth, who him and his wife wanted to have kids, but each kid they had became more deformed than the last, and they ended up having 4. The last one was Andrew, and one day he killed all his kids, and then he hanged himself, and they never found Andrew's body. So the urban legend is that Andrew still walks around the mansion. So they put the 4 pledges in there to stay the night, and if they do it, then they can join. So, and they do a little bit of good foreshadowing, because you have this guy Peter, whom he looked familiar. Kevin Brophy. The last film he was in 1998. So I guess he's not anyone I thought of. But I watched it on YouTube through my PlayStation on the TV, which has very poor quality. And so at first I was like, is that Chris Sarandon? Early Chris Sarandon role, pre-Fright Night? But then I was like, dumbass. He was in Dog Day Afternoon 5 years before this. So it's not Chris Sarandon. But they do some cool foreshadowing, because there's this gate, and Peter tells everyone the story, gets them all riled up. There's the ceremony where they lead them through the gate, and he's like, oh, like, you can't call for help, you can't escape, don't try to climb the gate, because then they show their spikes on top. It's like, I bet that will be used, which I'll get to. And so the 4 get inside, and we have Marty, who's Linda Blair, then Peter Barton, which Marty's like the smart, she's the final girl. She's 80s slasher film final girl. Peter Barton is Jeff, sort of her love interest. I think their costume was like a Victorian couple. Vincent Van Patten is Seth. He's like the surfer guy. And then Suki Goodwin is Denise, who's just the airheaded party girl. And at first, so it's just them, and then a couple other kids like Peter and a couple other ones sneak in because they have the house rigged with scares. Like, they can operate in such a way that they can open doors and windows, and they have like a speaker system with screams. So they have this whole house rigged with scares. And that's where we get our first kill, which I had to Facebook message jamaral81 and be like, dude, is this version cut? Because she goes to get decapitated, but like as soon as it gets here, it cuts. So I was like, I don't want to see the uncut version. You know, I want to be able to review the whole thing. Plus, if it's a slasher film, give me the gore. Seriously. You know, I love my gore, especially in slasher films. Go all out with slasher films. Have a ball. Over the years, I have come to appreciate, you know, writing and characters as much as gore, which is probably why I don't like Rob Zombie films very much. God, I wish I could stop wiping my nose. I know it's gross. I know it's rude. Um, and it's like this big figure that we don't get to see, when it's like this big hulking figure. So the girl who's helping set up the scare, she gets decapitated. The guy she's with gets his head turned all the way, which that was a cool effect. Which then, I mean, this is all scattered out. I'm just saying it right now. Peter tries to scare Denise. He's outside. Then he looks for his friend, and he sees that he's strung up. So he gets chased by the large killer, and he gets killed with a scythe. Get a little bit of blood, not a lot, but it all right. And for a while, the angles they used and the lighting, because most of the movie's pretty dark, it kind of reminded me of Humongous. You know, it's supposed to be this big, hulking killer. It's very dark. It feels like natural lighting. Which, another thing I noticed is Peter's costume is some sort of superhero costume. He's got these armbands that look like tinfoil. And I really miss whatever kind of film they used. Because back then you got this really, yeah, it's flawed. It's a flawed part of filmmaking, but I appreciate it because it's like old and it has charm. It has lens. I think it counts as lens flares coming off of it. You know, there's like just this glow and this hue coming off his shiny wristbands. You know, kind of like a lens flare. And you don't see that anymore. It's just like, I miss when there was those little imperfections, kind of like when you get grit and grade in like a really old like 16 millimeter film or something. And so of course Jeff, the surfer dude, Denise, they have sex. Linda Blair and Jeff, they're kind of talking, walking around. Seth gets up to use the bathroom, and this was the one scene that I actually thought was, it's not a jump scare, but I thought it was effective, and I wasn't expecting it for this kind of movie. He gets up to use the bathroom. She's staying in bed, and she's kind of just like laying there. And it's kind of like the scene with PJ Souls and Bob from Halloween, where it kind of pans through the whole bedroom. But she's laying there kind of asleep. And then it shows like the door, the hallway or something. There's no one there. Then when it cuts back, the figure's just like standing over her as if he teleported. It felt like a cut straight out of like The Strangers. Like he's not there, and then next time we see him, he's just standing there. I thought that was creepy and well done. But then when Seth comes back, he looks under the blankets and just her head is there. And I liked the effect, you know, pale, like blue, the blood. I liked the effect of the severed head. And so that's when he gets Linda Blair and Jeff. So now they're all like, fuck this. And he scales the fence. And earlier when I said this movie does some interesting things, um, again, this was like the initial slasher boom. So a lot of things hadn't quite become tropes yet, except for the final girl and being the smart one. But there were some character choices as far as like plot devices and narrative choices for certain characters that normally does not happen. And the foreshadowing was, I thought, well done too, because you think, oh, he's gonna get it. He's climbing over the gates. He's gonna slip. He's gonna fall. They're gonna see it. But no, he gets over and he runs off. And not only does he run off, so we think he's like this dumb stoner surfer. He doesn't just run off to save his own ass, which actually, one other thing is what's typical of slasher films is our group of teens are usually restricted to their setting, regardless of what it is. I think Friday the 13th helped establish that. Like in that, they're confined to a camp. Other like this case, it would be the mansion. Other places, it's okay, the woods or this abandoned building, or they're usually confined to their setting without a way out or a way to get help. And then there's this dangerous gate. He does get over it. So it's like, okay, that alone is different. He could just go save his own ass, but no, he goes to get help. Which, he goes to the police station, and the police don't believe him, because the mansion and everything around it has become an ongoing source for pranks. The police just don't believe him. And he is so easily able to just take like a shotgun and take some shit. And he goes back. He ends up going back to help them. And by this point they excuse me. They think that Andrew is the killer, which I think we as the audience kind of figured that as well. Then another one of the first murders where I was like, okay, where's this movie going? This is kind of different. Is one of the girls that is helping set up the scares is dragged underground, almost like a zombie. By a zombie, it seems like. So no, don't comment saying I called it a zombie. I said it looks and feels like one. I know it's the killer. I know people will hear that and be like, you thought it was a zombie. Yeah, fuck off. No, I didn't. You're gonna troll me, I'll troll you back. Fuck you. I'm getting to that point now. So I was just like, okay, this is kind of different. This isn't just the slice and dice slasher that I was expecting. Which, also, you don't really get a lot of slashers in this type of setting. The gothic haunted house, almost as if like House on Haunted Hill, if it was a slasher film as well, which I love. House on Haunted Hill, not the 99 version. I don't say remake. Remake is after 2003. 99 version. Original 1959 Vincent Price. Great fucking movie. Because it's like this big spooky house with pranks and gags. Only now there's the slasher element. Overall, it is a slasher film. I bet that same guy that commented on Night School saying, it's not even a horror film. It's a police procedural. It's a slasher film. And then saying, it wasn't a psycho killer. It was a real person. Real people can't be psychos? Isn't that what every slasher film is? That's not like, Freddy or Jason or Halloween. Aren't they all real people with psycho killers? Alright. But anyway, And then at one point they do find like this secret passage, and they find like the remains of the Garth family. And then we see this large disfigured person. He's after them. The Jeff character tries to subdue him, and he knocks him down some stairs, and of course that doesn't really do anything. But then the second killer appears, so now we're like, holy fuck, there's two of them. Which is kind of like, okay, because the way the legend goes, the guy killed all his sons and himself, but only one body wasn't found. I would have liked it better if it was just one. So, I guess it is another sibling. It's one of Andrew's brothers. And Seth comes back. Well, eventually, so yeah, he does come back, and because he steals a car from someone. He's attacked by one of the brothers, but he managed to shoot him because he stole a gun from the police station because it was so easy. So they let him back in, but then he goes through all this shit. He breaks out of the setting over the spiky gate, makes it to a police station, manages to get weapons, steals a car, comes back for help, and then he's killed off screen. It feels anticlimactic. Usually if you're going to kill off a character that does have an arc like that, because when I say character decisions, this guy normally would have been one of the first ones to go. Just the dumb stoner surfer dude. Normally he's one of the first. But they carried him out not only through almost to the end, but they had him accomplish all that shit. He really defied slasher odds. But then that's why I said it's 1981. There were a lot of slashers that were called slashers even between 78 and 81. The tropes were really started with like Friday the 13th, so the year before. But still, me personally seeing it at this point, after how many I've seen, it's just like, okay, that was interesting that they had him do all of that. It just sucks he was killed off screen. Normally, if you're going to kill a character that's done that much, it's usually a pretty big death. So he was killed off screen. That kind of sucked. And that's when we see Andrew. And Andrew, the look of the Andrew character is like a mixture of Gunther from the Funhouse and Pluto from the Hills Have Eyes remake. Meaning he wears all black. And I mean, his face isn't super deformed like Gunther from the Funhouse, but he's really pale. He does have kind of like a bulbousy, lumpy head, and like really gray around the eyes. But at this point, Linda Blair gets the shotgun, and so Jeff helps her escape through the window, but then before he can do it, he's like thrown out of it to his death. And so then she runs through the hedge maze, because that's cool. There's a hedge maze. I'm sorry. Fucking nose. I gotta find some non-drowsy allergy shit. I used to take Benadryl like Pez when I was a kid. Now it makes me drowsy. And that's where she finds Peter's body. Then she comes across the car that Seth stole. She's able to hotwire it, because they establish that she's the smart one. She's gonna just drive through the gate. That's when Andrew gets on the back of the car. And this is why the foreshadowing was cool. She hits the gate. The gate goes like this. And since he's on the back of the car, the spikes go right through him, impaling and killing him. So it's like, okay, they foreshadowed it in the very beginning. Pretty sure a character's gonna get it. There was a setup where a character could get it that way. Then they defied that odd by defying another odd by the character getting out, which defied another odd by him not just saving his ass, but trying to get help. And then that foreshadowed spiky gate ended up killing the killer. And the crash knocks her out. She wakes up the next day. And then the credits roll. She gets out of the car. He's still impaled. That's another thing. I like this ending because I guess it's kind of a Friday the 13th end scare, because he does kind of pop out and get on the car. But it doesn't have that final jumps, finally, once he's impaled and we're supposed to believe he's dead. It doesn't have that final jump scare. It's not set up like he's not there. He's still out there somewhere. It's not a sequel bait ending. It doesn't have a twist like, oh, the Garths actually had 5 kids. That body wasn't found either. Or, oh, there was supposed to be remains of another one in that room. No, they don't do a stupid twist or a lame final scare. They end the movie. And for a slasher film, I know there's hundreds of slasher films that do that, but a lot of them do the sequel bait, or I mean, there's a difference when Halloween did it, because when John Carpenter did Halloween with Michael not on the lawn, he wasn't thinking of a sequel. That was his way of ending it. And it works for that film because they talk about him being the boogeyman. So it's like he could just get up and be anywhere. So it works for that film. Of course, they did all the sequels that they did and turned it into what it is now. I was surprised by this film. One, I liked it. I mean, I like most slasher films I see. I've ranted on some, but I do like, if it's a slasher film, chances are I'm going to like it. Especially from the early 80s. Especially 81. 80 and 81. 82. But I was surprised by this. Like, yeah, it had the final girl, but it also, it did a lot with the dumbass character. He went from being the stoner surfer dumbass to accomplishing the most in the whole movie. That was surprising. I didn't mind the body count, like the amount of people that were killed. I just wish that there was sort of bloodier deaths. I mean, it was 81. They were still celebrating Friday the 13th. I mean, that's kind of like what On My Bloody Valentine was. Like, let's just go crazy with, these kills. But, I mean, it's okay that it didn't, because I really liked the setting. I loved the Gothic mansion. It really helped set this mood. And I like that it wasn't all supernatural. It was pranks and gags, sort of like House on Haunted Hill. So there's a lot of I like the look of the killer. It's not exaggerated deformity. You see him just enough so you can't pick apart the imperfections of like the makeup or anything. I did like Linda Blair. You know, of all the films that came out in 1981, in general, not just horror, don't know why she was picked for a Razzie. But, you know, I did enjoy this. It followed the formula of a slasher while still doing some pretty interesting things with it. So I was pretty impressed. And jamaral81 said this was one of his favorite 80s slashers, and I can see why. It's, I wouldn't put it in my top 10, but that doesn't mean I don't like it. A lot of people think that if it's not your top 10, that means you hate it. Or, hell, I've even had reviews where I said I liked a film, and this one guy was, you praised it. You praised a dumb film. No, I just said I liked it. I said it was entertaining. People are so hyperbolic, it's fucking annoying. But he said it was one of his favorite slasher films. That's not what I meant by hyperbolic. I was talking about the dumbasses. And I can see why. This is a pretty entertaining, fun, early 80s slasher. And I enjoyed it. So, jamaral81, thank you so much for being a patron and requesting this. Again, everyone else, go check out the tiers and support the channel by becoming a patron yourself. And wow, this has been a long review. I guess you got your money's worth, man. But anyway, thank you for watching.